What is happening? AJ Gamer Dude here, and one of the games that I am personally most excited for that's coming out this year, or rather is actually coming out the day of me recording this, at least in my local region, is Black Myth Wukong. Now, the funny thing is that there have been some talk about streamer guidelines going on, so what some companies might do is whenever they give say reviewers games to review, there'll be some guidelines of stuff that you can talk about, stuff that you can't, and just things along those lines. Now, with the case of streamer guidelines, they're more from the Asian region, so generally things like, oh, you can't play past a certain point on stream just to avoid spoiling the game for other people and things like that, so specifically more Japanese games. So it's funny that now we've got a Chinese game that's actually kind of falling in that same bucket, but I guess Chinese developers might be under the same scrutiny. I'm not 100% about that, but I don't think a lot of us would be, since I don't think a significant majority of people, or rather everyone who's watching this video, has ever maybe lived in China. That's not something that I could ever really confirm, and in fact I think my my analytics definitely show that China does not appear on the list of countries that people watch me from. So this is just an interesting thought to have as we kind of go into the actual story in and of itself, which is doing also quite well with reviews on top of it. I think it's roughly sitting at about 83 or 84 on Metacritic at the moment. But yeah, the text consists of a list of do's and don'ts, with the former being simply to enjoy the game. So the do's, just enjoy the game, which is really cool to hear, because that's exactly what we want to do. Now, let's get to the don'ts. So it veers off completely, saying that streamers playing Black Myth Wukong must not include nudity, feminist propaganda, fetishization, and other content that instigates negative discourse. So let's start from the beginning. Nudity. I don't think anyone can just rip all of their clothes off in stream, so I think that might very well just be a given. Female propaganda. This is probably referring to the IGN article that was made pretty much bashing game science about the workplace being incredibly against women, pretty much against feminization, or pretty much it just talked about how guys at the studio talk in a really in a crass way towards women. But the thing is that article was, whatever messages they got were all in Chinese, so it seems like it was inherently translated to, or mistranslated to, make it seem like it's actually worse than what it actually is. But again, you'll only know if you are Chinese, so there's that element to it as well. Then you've got things like fetishization, which I feel like is just going to happen no matter what. No matter what happens, characters are going to be fetishized, whether it be a wolf, whether it be, the wolf dude, Lycan from Zenless Zone Zero. People are freaking loving this guy. People love him. Not in ways that you'll want to talk about or accept, but you know what? I don't judge. Good looking, but not for me. Not for me is what I would say. So yeah, I feel like no matter who you're looking at, I feel like everyone and everything can be fetishized by streamers as a whole. So I thought that was actually kind of an interesting one to mention. But I feel like this is also just mostly China kind of creeping in here with nudity and fetishization. I think feminist propaganda definitely comes from the IGN article, where IGN kept constantly asking the staff at Game Science every time they previewed the game, we're not going to answer your question, we're only going to answer questions about the game, which was a great response to that sort of question about what do you think about people in your studio abusing, saying sexual comments about other female staff members, for example, that. Okay, sure. And anything that instigates negative discourse, and there was some so a lot of things are putting in a lot of negative discourse at the moment, and I blame this part on Americans specifically because of how Americans treat elections and things like that. So I feel like they are absolutely to blame for negative discourse, because the internet, and I also partly blame the internet for this as well, though the internet is largely like Americanized in most sense of the term, because everything runs on a negative news cycle. Whenever you talk about something bad, that's usually what gets the clicks and things along those lines. So I don't think I should be surprised that, you know, you don't want to bring negativity to a game. Like, when you want people to play a game, you want them to have fun, you want them to have a good time. I think this might relate to people just being, you know, overly politicizing everything. So pretty much these guidelines are only applied if you get the game from the publisher, because these guidelines have been made by the publisher and not the developer, because it seems like people who actually are reviewing the game did not get similar guidelines. So I feel like what's happening here is the developer is trying to do their thing, but the publisher is like, hey, you're still like, you know, a Chinese entity, so you do need to adhere to some business related guidelines from the CCP that still apply when you're dealing with outside Chinese markets. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way of looking at it. Do I know if it's correct or not? Absolutely not. But I'm at this point purely just speculating as to whether or not, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so I thought that this was kind of an interesting thing to talk about, because I don't believe I've seen something like this where it tries to clamp down on things like not talking about, not using words like quarantine, isolation, or COVID-19, which 100% is just China trying to sweep the origination of the COVID-19 pandemic to the Wuhan markets in China specifically, or not discussing content related to China's game industry policies, opinions, news, which, I mean, come on, man. Black Myth Wukong is a Chinese developed game, so if there's news about Black Myth Wukong, I feel like that's not going to be talked about. Again, that's part of this agreement, but of course, if you choose to buy the game, none of these apply. So I feel like that's certainly, at least if nothing else, worth mentioning. That being said, however, and there's also some stuff like, you know, not swearing and things like that. So I thought that that was also an interesting thing, because, I mean, all streamers swear to some extent, but you can only try and keep things so knit together. But in my opinion, I don't think that these, well, not these, like, some of it makes sense because it's like, you know, Chinese company trying to do Chinese things. And of course, people, especially, I've at least spoken to some Chinese people that live outside of China, and they aren't happy about the clampdown on speech and what you can say and things along those lines. So I can at least speak to that to some extent, but I can't say that I've spoken to, you know, majority of the population to be able to make a, you know, good consensus, argument about it. So with all of that being said, that's kind of what we're looking at the moment. I don't want politics in my games, sure. I just want to be able to sit down and enjoy the game. That being said, however, I never watch streamers, so I guess I don't really care that much about it, but I feel like this might just be China overreaching in the streamer market, in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 300 subs by the end of the year. I do have a Patreon, so if you feel like tossing a few bucks my way, you can absolutely do that. And with all of that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.